everyone, my name is Anthony Nathaniel, and in this video we'll be dealing with plant nutrition. Now, we've been talking about animals. We know animals a lot, but it's an irony that plants, which are one of the most important kingdoms of living organisms, we don't know them much. So that's because plants are just like the backroom boys. So they don't talk much, they don't move much, we don't notice them much. But only when it comes to the fruit season, when we want to harvest our crops, that's when we know the importance of plants. But plants are very important, and plants also eat. So I don't think you ever took that seriously. But today we are going to talk about how plants eat. So now, plants, they eat through what is known as photosynthesis. And why is that? Because plants, they like taking matters into their own hands. So they like producing their own foods by themselves. So they exhibit what is known as autotrophic nutrition. So and that's out of that autotrophic nutrition, they specifically deal with what is known as photosynthetic division. In autotrophic nutrition is basically when your organism is producing its food by itself. So basically, plants produce their food by themselves, but this time around, out of that autotrophic, they are doing what is known as photosynthetic. Out of that autotrophic, there's also what is known as chemosynthetic, and that is made use of by all these by some type of blue green algae and some bacteria and some simple organisms which are able to synthesize simple chemicals together in order to produce their own food. So those ones are different. Just like, so for example, we can have something like plastic degrading bacteria. So there are some plastic that can be degraded. So this bacteria, they act on it and they act on those chemicals, and they are feeding on those chemicals, and they are also performing their nutrition. So but in plants, we are going to be dealing with photosynthetic, and in photosynthetic nutrition, it's basically the combining of what carbon dioxide with what water to give you what glucose. So basically, your plants react. They'll combine carbon dioxide gas from the air. They will react with water that they absorb from their roots, liquid water, and then they will get what they will use those two to produce glucose. That's C6H12 O6 and water O2. So now if we are balancing the equation, we'll put 6 here, and then 6 here. So that means it takes 6 molecules of carbon dioxide with 6 molecules of water, then to produce 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. So this is the statement of photosynthesis. And what is catalyzing this reaction? It is what? Sunlight. SUNLIGHT, sunlight. And another thing that's catalyzing it is what? Chlorophyll. PHYLL. Now, actually, what is actually catalyzing it is the sunlight alone, but the chlorophyll is what is synthesizing the sunlight. It is what is making them combine together. So it's not really like a catalyst this time around. So but the sunlight is what is producing the energy. Now, in my chemistry class crash course in chemistry of this channel, I talked about, in a particular episode, I talked about the fact that in when you react hydrogen and chlorine under sunlight, it becomes very explosive. But whereas if you react them in the dark, they are not very explosive. Now, that shows that sunlight has energy, and in physics we call this energy photons. Now I won't go deep into that, but these photons, they are the ones that make this reaction possible, so that this will be possible. And then there are different stages of photosynthesis. We have the light stage and we have the dark stage. In the light stage is known as what? The splitting of water. So basically, you have your water, you have 4 molecules of water are being split into 4 molecules of hydrogen ions and 4 molecules of hydroxide ions, 4 OH minus. So if you are a chemistry student, this shouldn't be a problem for you. Then next we have this hydroxide ions, 4 OH minus. So this will also split again to form 2 molecules of water, 2H2O, to form 2 molecules of water, and we'll confirm that, and oxygen. Yes, so that is the oxygen that is produced, plus O2. So now in this in this stage, this is the light stage. Now in the dark stage will now be carried out on this CO2. So it is what? The light stage is the splitting of water, then the dark stage is the reduction of the carbon dioxide. So it is basically reduced into a form that can be converted to glucose. So that hydrogen ion will combine with the carbon dioxide to form simple sugar. That is 4H plus CO2 will give you CH2O plus that's water that is produced before. So basically what that means is that you take these hydrogen ions, that's 4H plus CO2. So combine to give you CH2O and water and H2. So if you notice, this is the basic formula of glucose. This is the what is known as the empirical formula of glucose. But the molecular formula is C6H12O6. Don't forget that. So basically, this is the whole statement of this is the summary of how our plants produce food, how they produce all those succulent fruits, how they produce the energy that powers our world, our earth. So now, apart from that, we want to talk about now the chemicals. These chemicals that are essential for the plants. Now plants, they don't feed only on sunlight and carbon dioxide and water. If that were the case, then we don't need to plant them in the soil again, because we can just have our plants suspended in the air and they'll be tapping their water and their carbon dioxide from the air. But instead they need something from the soil. That is why your plant is in the soil. It's not because it's not necessarily only because of support, but your plant also needs nutrients from the soil. And then one of these three, there are three major elements that it needs, and I will list the other elements. One of them, these three are NPK, that is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. For nitrogen, it aids your protein your protein synthesis. It aids the synthesis of protein. That is, it helps your plants to be able to make proteins. Now in plants do not make proteins ordinarily. Now they make glucose, right? But then they can be able to synthesize proteins from glucose. Why? Because in chemistry, a protein is a combination of a carbonyl group and an amino group. So that amino group is synthesized from the nitrogen, and that nitrogen is formed when you have nitrogen fixing bacteria in the soil, when you have lightning and all the rest that convert the nitrogen into nitrates, and those nitrates combine with the glucose to form protein. So that is how plants synthesize their proteins. But ordinarily plants do not synthesize proteins. The major thing they do is glucose. So this nitrogen, its major function is to synthesize proteins. And then your phosphorus too, it also performs very importantly to synthesize proteins and formation of coenzymes. Then your potassium too also performs the major function of synthesizing carbohydrates, because these carbohydrates, some of them still consist of potassium. So when they have to be synthesized, so that potassium will act like a catalyst that makes the atoms bond together to form the glucose. Now that is why in your fertilizer it is always made up of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium as major elements. Now other elements that we need, now all these elements I will be listing, they are the major elements, major nutrients that are needed by your plants. Other ones are calcium for the formation of cell walls, and your magnesium, very importantly, for your chlorophyll formation. So now, aside your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, your magnesium is the fourth most important, because for your magnesium you have to get chlorophyll for your plant to even make food. So if you don't have magnesium, your plant cannot even make glucose. So always remember that. Then you have sulfur, iron, manganese, copper, boron, molybdenum, and silicon. So thank you for watching this video.